What an absolute treat. I have two of the absolute most powerful electric unicycles ever made in front of me. We have the Extreme Bowl Commander GT Pro and the Begode ET Max. One of these is better than the other in so many different ways. We're going to discuss in detail which one is the better electric unicycle, and at the very end, I'm going to give you the super secret scoop on the brand new Commander GT Pro Plus that's coming out. Let's talk about it all. This is Wheel Good Time. Thanks for joining me on Wheel Good Time, where we're going to be talking about which one of these wheels is better in every different category. And what a better way to start than what everyone wants to know about: power. Both of these wheels have high-performance 50S battery cells with 168 volts each. They're very, very similar. They also have very similar weights, being 108 pounds and 104 pounds. The biggest difference between these two is that the ET Max has a 4,500 watt tile type motor, whereas the Extreme Bowl Commander GT Pro has a 4,000 watt motor. Now, just because the GT Pro has 500 watts less doesn't mean that it's any slouch. In fact, this is a C40 motor, whereas this one is a higher speed yet lower torque ever so slightly tile type motor. Very similar, but this one is slightly higher torque per watt. In terms of 0 to 40 mile per hour times, which are GPS corrected, the ET Max time is 4.84 seconds. On the GT Pro, my fastest 0 to 40 mile per hour time is 5.47 seconds. Now, admittedly, that's not a scientific test. Those are just my own personal results. So in reality, the ET Max had a faster acceleration time by over 1 second for my 0 to 40 mile per hour times. But the GT Pro felt like it was faster. The reason for that, I believe, is because the pedals are a lot softer on the GT Pro, and on the ET Max, they're just extra firm. Even in soft mode, they're just really firm. And so it doesn't feel like it's accelerating very quickly, but in reality, it actually was. I want to take a quick moment and thank the sponsors of this video, nextgenmobility.org and alienrides.com. Each one of these vendors kindly and generously volunteered to provide an EUC for demo and review purposes, and this video would not be possible without them. Check them out in the video description, where I have affiliate links to each of their websites, and don't forget your coupon code WheelGoodTime, which gets you a discount and it directly supports the channel. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Let's talk about ride comfort for a few minutes. The GT Pro wins absolutely hands down. Here's why. Both of these have 3 different riding modes: soft, medium, and strong, and they also have their off-road mode and racing mode. Personally, I like to ride with really soft pedals. I like them real mushy and soft because it makes it easier to lean a wheel forward a whole lot more, and then you're able to torque it and get a whole lot more speed. It's so much better in my opinion. But the ET Max has just very stiff pedals overall. Even in the absolute softest setting, the ET Max's pedals are just really hard. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but from a personal comfort perspective, that is just not nearly as good. I absolutely prefer the ride quality on the GT Pro. Think of it this way. When you're riding on the freeway at 70 miles an hour, it's a lot more comfortable of a ride to be in a Jeep Wrangler SUV as opposed to a Chevy Corvette, a sports car. The suspension is a lot tighter, and so it's just not as comfortable of a ride. The GT Pro is both fast and you're riding on a cloud. The ET Max is just really fast, and it's just a very tight suspension. Speaking of suspension, let's talk about that. The suspension on the GT Pro has 2 hydraulic shocks that are 1 on each side here, and it's adjustable using this little dial here. It's really easy to use. You don't need any tools, and it's just so smooth. It's an incredibly smooth ride. It has only, air quotes only, 95 millimeters of suspension travel, as opposed to the Begode ET Max. The ET Max has a coil type suspension that gives you 130 millimeters of suspension travel. So the suspension travel distance is a lot further on the ET Max. The biggest difference is that this here is a 1,300 pound spring, and I found it to be extremely oversprung. It was just not a very smooth ride. It's very tight. As I said before, it's kind of like riding in a sports car suspension. It's just extremely tight. It's not a fun or comfortable ride, but, and I want to make a big qualification there, but the 900-pound suspension on the ET Max is really, really awesome. I tried it at Oak City Shred Fest. It is really, really comfortable. I highly recommend the 900-pound suspension coil on the ET Max if you get it, just because it's so much smoother of a ride. Unless you're a rider that is about 250 pounds or up, I highly recommend you only consider the 900-pound suspension coil on the ET Max. Between the 95 millimeters of suspension travel on the GT Pro and the 900-pound suspension on the ET Max, I would still go with the GT Pro. It is just such an amazing ride that this wheel offers, and it's just unmatched by anything that the coil shock is able to provide on the ET Max. The GT Pro wins hands down when it comes to the suspension. Both of these wheels have outstanding build quality. Both of them get really high marks, but one of these is a little better than the other. The ET Max has more of a refined, more finished product look to it, but we have so many screws that make this thing really, really hard to work on. So for example, we have 18 screws that come up in this little panel on each side in the middle, and they're done with Allen wrenches at 2.5 millimeters. That is way too small. It makes it really, really easy to strip out these screws here, and it's a humongous headache. So I really did not like that. On the GT Pro, we do have a decent number of screws, but for the smaller screws, they actually use Phillips screws. So those are not nearly as strippable. I really liked that. That was a nice touch. And for anything that required the use of an Allen wrench, they used like a 4 millimeter one, which makes it really easy to operate on. So in terms of ease of maintenance and tearing it apart, easily the winner of this is the GT Pro. In terms of ride stability, the GT Pro is more stable than the ET Max, and that is at all speeds. When I first rode on the GT Pro, I was very impressed with how stable and maneuverable it was at all speeds. A lot of that has to do with the C40 motor, which is very, very beefy. So there's a lot of rotating mass in there. And it just seems like the GT Pro is more stable with a lower center of gravity than the ET Max. If I had to choose between riding these just in terms of ride feel, the stability at speed, I would absolutely take the GT Pro over the ET Max. That's not to say that the ET Max is bad. It's just that the lower center of gravity and higher level of stability on the GT Pro definitely wins it for me in this category. Let me ask you a super important question that will alter the course of your entire life. Do you hate happiness? If the answer to that question is yes, then I recommend you just move right along because the rest of this statement is not for you. But if the answer to that is no, then please hit that subscribe button and hit that like button if you haven't already. It means a lot to me and, well, it makes me happy. The ET Max is designed to be ridden seated. Never mind this little bump for my GoPro mount here, but the shape of this is just saying, sit on me. It's ergonomically designed, it's nice and curved, it's just designed for you to be sitting on this wheel. Unfortunately, because there's no cushioning on it, it's just very slick plastic. It's just not super comfortable without making modifications on it. So if you were to ride seated, I would recommend somewhere like vertexpads.com. They have a nice seat there. But when it comes to seated riding on the GT Pro, we are just completely flat here. It doesn't seem like it's designed to be ridden seated, and the placement of the trolley handle kind of interferes with putting a third-party seat on there. But if you'll notice, there's a lot of space for you to sit on here. And we have this little cushiony bits on the sides that make it pretty comfortable. Honestly, because of the high level of gyroscopic stability on the GT Pro, I actually liked seated riding better on the GT Pro. Even though the ET Max is taller and therefore it's easier for you to come to a seated position on it, I felt a lot more secure riding seated on the GT Pro. When riding seated on the GT Pro, there's just so much space for you to shift your butt forward or backwards, which really makes it a really convenient thing for riding seated. Let's talk about the looks. And for the most part, people might think this is a subjective thing, but that's where you're wrong. The ET Max wins. There are 3 reasons why people generally will tend to go for the ET Max, even though the ride on the GT Pro is just so much better. Number 1, the price tag on the ET Max is $400 less than the GT Pro. Secondly, we have a smart BMS on the ET Max and the GT Pro doesn't. That is really, really important to me, and I know it's really important to a lot of prospective buyers. Not being able to monitor your individual battery cell health when technically lithium-ion batteries are bombs, then it's a little bit disconcerting not being able to know whether or not your battery cells are healthy or not. So the ET Max has a big win in that category. Lastly, and this is another huge one, the ET Max has waterproofing. We have an IP67 officially and independently certified rating on the ET Max. The GT Pro does not have that. Yes, it has some decent levels of waterproofing. For example, with the C40 motor, it has the same as the EX30. Therefore, the motor has a little bit of waterproofing to it. Also, there's a gasket on top here that prevents water from getting in. However, Extreme Bull does not say that this wheel is waterproof. They are making no waterproof claims, and so you are definitely taking a bit of a risk riding it in the rain. The ET Max, not so much. So again, for $400 less, the ET Max has some major things that address the community's concerns. Whereas the GT Pro, they seem like they're a bit stuck in their ways of refusing to do a smart BMS or waterproofing. They're kind of stuck in the year 2022, whereas the ET Max is looking towards the future. Now let's talk about some really exciting news. The Extreme Bull GT Pro Plus is now on its way. It looks almost identical to the GT Pro, the regular one. But the major differences are that there's going to be some ambient lighting here. We're going to have the exact same 4,500 watt motor that is on the ET Max onto the GT Pro Plus. This is a tile type motor. That's going to be a huge upgrade, but we have to keep in mind that the GT Pro Plus also has 4,440 watt hours of battery. That's almost 50% more battery than what either one of these has at 3,000. So with an increase in weight, we're going to have to see a equal or greater increase in motor power to be able to counteract the increase in weight because of the power to weight ratio. I personally think that that is going to be a significant upgrade. As I said before, the GT Pro feels like it's a much faster wheel than the ET Max, but the numbers don't lie. The ET Max is faster. If we put in the motor of the ET Max onto this thing is going to be blowing people out of the water. Not to mention that the GT Pro Plus has a 6P battery configuration, which also means that we're going to be seeing a significant decrease in the amount of voltage sag when you're just hammering it at high speeds. So in essence, we're going to have a battery capacity of somewhere between like an EX30 and the Master Pro, but we're going to have the same weight as the Master Pro, so it's going to be hyper stable. Each of these wheels has some major advantages over each other. For example, if you want the wheel that is the most waterproof, then you definitely have to go with the ET Max. But if you want the absolute most comfortable ride possible with the cushiest suspension, you have to go with the GT Pro. If you want the awesome safety features of the Smart BMS, then the ET Max is the one to get. If you want something that's actually kind of beautiful looking, you gotta go with the ET Max. If you want something that is priced a little bit cheaper, it's the ET Max. But if you ask me, if I'm going out on either one of these wheels, which one do I want to ride on? It's going to be the GT Pro. It's just so much more comfortable of a ride. It's so much more fun of a ride. Yes, you can accelerate just a bit faster with the ET Max, but the difference is pretty imperceptible. And considering the difference is so imperceptible, that's why I would rather go with a ride that is more comfortable and more fun, and you can only get that on the GT Pro. Both of these wheels are going to be seen at races, I'm sure, and both of these wheels are likely to be getting on the podiums. These are the highest voltage and most powerful EUCs ever made. Yes, even more powerful than the Lynx, and they corner super well. I believe both of these EUCs are going to be seen at a ton of races, especially at AVS, where you have some really long straightaways where you're going to be able to be hitting that 60-mile-an-hour mark that some other wheels are just not going to be able to touch. These wheels are the ones that are going to be able to do it. Both of these wheels look really exciting in their own special and unique ways, but personally, I'm the most excited about the Commander GT Pro Plus. If you want to learn more about the Commander GT Pro, GT Pro Plus, or the ET Max, check out the video description. But before you go, on your way out, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel by hitting that button right there. That's all for today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.